Shayda, and in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you some of the illustrations that I use to accent my hand-lettered pieces. Things like flowers, flags, banners, and arrows. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so if you're a big fan of the channel and you've binge watched all the videos, then you know that I already have a hand lettering accents tutorial. However, this was one of my first videos and it runs a little long at 30 minutes. I know, I just love to talk. So I thought this would be a good subject to revisit, make a little bit of a sharper tutorial, and just go over some of these favorite accents of mine. So let's get our pens and paper out and get started. Okay, so to start, I'm going to show you guys some of my favorite ways for creating division, things like flags and banners, arrows, and borders. So here I'm going to start by making this very flat sort of banner across the top. So I've got my title word here, lettering, and I'm just drawing a rectangle around it, and I'll add some extra lines to give it that sketchy, illustrative quality. And then I'm going to indent slightly and join those two lines with a V, and that really gives it that very flat, basic banner or flag, and that's great for your title word or to create some division within a poster or a quote. And you can shade that by doing a little bit of hatching or stippling, or you can use your gray marker and just add a little bit of shadow and depth there. Okay, now let me show you my favorite border of all time, which is the simple hand-drawn border. And we don't need a ruler to do this. What you're going to do is you're going to pull your pen towards your body. So the pen, your arm is always coming in towards yourself, and it's a very natural motion, and it creates this perfectly imperfect but quite straight hand-drawn border. All right, now within that, let me show you a sort of flying flag or banner. So you can see me doing this here in pencil, and I'll go over it in pen. And what I'm doing is I'm drawing a very shallow S shape on its side, and then I drop down and I repeat that S shape, and then I just join those two lines with a sort of curved line, slightly curved lines on the end, and then you can add the ends of the banner there to give it that sort of depth. And you can make those either straight or ragged. It's totally up to you. Again, this looks great if you shade it with a little bit of hatching, a little bit of lines or stippling. And I'm just going to add that gray marker. And I like the gray marker because it doesn't really read to the eye as color. So you can add gray marker to a black and white piece and it still stays very neutral. All right, now let's do a couple arrows. So arrows are also great for creating division within a piece. A horizontal arrow is wonderful for separating some words from other words or sentences. And they're wonderful because you can pretty much draw a line with a point on it and it's going to look like an arrow. So you can have fun designing these things and doing whatever you want. Here I've just sort of got a straight / not straight line. And I'm adding these rhombuses to it to create the arrowhead and the tail here, and a few sketchy lines, sort of bring it to life and pick it up off the page. Another one here, again, starting with that straight, not straight at all line. And then for the arrowhead, I'm going to do a heart shape, really simple. And then to finish it, I'm just adding a few like scruffy lines at the back. So it's that simple, and again, just have fun and design your own. Play around with it, but this is a motif that's excellent for separating words in a quote. And before I finish this bit, I'll just show you these banners and flags. They do not need to be perfect. This one here is sort of long and it's not even symmetrical, but it doesn't matter. It looks fine, so have fun with this stuff. Okay, one of my favorite motifs is the motif of the laurel. And the laurel is sort of the open wreath. So here I'm doing these curved lines to enclose these words here. And on these lines, or these twigs, I'm drawing pairs of leaves that get slightly larger as I go down the stem or the twig. And you can see how that sort of frames the words there. And that's the laurel. Now the laurel might actually cross and close at the bottom, or it could be open like this one. And then across the top here, I'm doing another twig motif that is excellent for creating division again. And it's just these pairs of leaves, and then in the center there you can really put anything. I've put a heart, but you could put a word or any symbol that you like. Now let me show you a couple different flowers that I like to add to my hand lettered pieces. So these are some of the simplest flowers. This one I call my blob flower, and it's just these sort of 4 or 5 petals, more like blob shaped petals, and then you put an X in the middle. And then my hand flower, there's these 5 points and it curves around at the bottom to join it. Leaves are also wonderful. Just doing random leaves can be excellent as part of your lettering project. So you start with a twig and then you can just make any sort of shape around it to create this leaf design. And it can be as detailed or as simple as you want. And it can be as large or as small as you want. And sometimes a small, simple leaf is all you need. And you can play around and have fun creating these other designs. Also, my little spiral rose, you do a spiral, and once it's the size that you want, you just finish it with 2 little leaves or a pair of leaves. And berries are excellent, and they're as simple as doing a circle with some stems and a little dot to sort of finish it and give it that berry look. And then when I go to add color, if you're using your Pigma Microns or your Sharpies, you can actually add watercolor on top and they won't bleed. But here I'm just using my artist markers, and I start with the artist marker and then I go in with like Sharpies or Staedtler Triplus fine liners, and I just add a little bit of detail. So I'll, add a little bit of darker green on the lighter green or something like that. The next thing I want to show you is something I've been doing lately. I like to use the elements of lettering in my lettering illustrations. So I'll draw the notebooks or pencils or pens that I'm using. So here I'm sort of making a page around the words. I sort of want to have it sort of looking as if it's coming towards the viewer there, so it gets a little larger towards the bottom. And I'm making it into a notebook, so I'm adding this sort of extra large, whimsical spiral across the top, little scalloped edge at the top of the page. Then I'm just adding a few scribbly lines here to make it look as if it is a notebook. A little shadow across the bottom gives it sort of a base, a cardboard base, and then the color really brings it to life. So adding that pink line down the left-hand margin, I'm adding these very faint blue lines across the page to make it look like it is this lined spiral notebook. And then I always add a bit of this teal blue, even though it's white pages. I just feel like that's sort of what the eye thinks white looks like. And then a little brown on the cardboard, and then I'm going to add a pencil on the side here. So I'm doing this sort of skinny, extra long pencil, very funny looking, not trying to make it look exactly like life or anything. And I'll just layer some artist markers and some of the smaller ones like Sharpies to bring that color forward. So, adding artist marker and then putting the Sharpie on top. And I've got this really fun, very whimsical drawing that looks like hand lettering. All right, so the next and the last thing that we're going to do is a bit of hatching. So hatching is something that I've been using a lot recently to fill in my letters. And it's just this process of drawing these little lines. So here what I do is I've got my letters all set up and they're ready to be sort of filled in with something. And I begin by doing this very dark bottom, so I'm coloring the letter in completely at the bottom there. And then I start drawing these little lines and they get farther and farther apart as I go up the length of each letter. And I'm using a small Pigma Micron nib pen, so I'm using the 005 or the 01, the smallest. And you can really do whatever you want with this. You don't have to be super fussy, or you can take all day getting it exactly perfect. It's up to you how you want to represent this. Here I've sped it up obviously, but I am going pretty quickly, so it's not perfect, and that's okay. All right, and that's everything I wanted to show you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more of these tutorials, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share this stuff with your friends and your family, and I will see you next week. Next week there's going to be 2 more tutorials and even a big surprise, so come back on Tuesday and Friday for all that good stuff. See you then.